The subject matter today will be the OpenClaw moment. They call it the third moment in AI.
Yeah, it's the wild west right now. Whenever people are utilizing agents, OpenClaw, they are downloading them and then they're giving them internet access, which means that the second that you put it online, hackers are just already probing it.
We've moved from an environment where we were first concerned about wrong answers, right? Hallucinations. And now we're talking about totally autonomous execution. I mean, and this isn't a matter of months.
Like we have these protections. We have the click, I am not a robot. These captures. These agents are happily clicking these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The funny thing about that is not only is it ironic, but it's consciously lying.
Yeah.
You know,
That's true.
it knows it's saying, click here, I'm not a robot. It knows it's a robot and it's doing it anyway. And so what the hell's going on? Because that's crazy.
Gentlemen, welcome back to another AI Companion. We have a longtime guests on the call, Suprit, Michael Suprit. I guess I describe you as an angel investor perspective on this call. Michael Sembush, Vice President of Product. Now, also Alex had one of the more popular podcasts with Shirok. He's an ethical hacker and founder of Stealth AI, Alex Thomas. Hey, do you want to give a quick intro before we dive in?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a ethical hacker. I've been, hacking into companies for the past 10 years now, and I absolutely love it. And then I ended up starting up a company called StealthNet AI. Basically, we are creating AI agents in order to automate the hacking process. So I've been in the hacking field for about a decade now, and I won't be leaving anytime soon because of the AI Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever a hacker's on a podcast, you tend to lean in a little bit because there is a certain amount that I don't want to deal with, but is certainly terrifying. The subject matter today will be the OpenClaw moment. They call it the third moment in AI. I want to just unpack this a little bit. I want to get you guys' impressions on this. But I guess when we talk about the three big moments in AI, and this was on the Lex Friedman podcast, I think this is probably not something he coined either, but you had the ChatGPT moment in 2022, where you had the natural language moment. We learned AI could talk and write as humans, using tokens as forecasting what the next response should be. And then you had the DeepSeek moment where Chinese venture-backed company, or I guess it was a hedge fund, actually funded a model for 1/10 of the processing power. AI could reason through the same amount as these, what we call like God models from these large labs. And now in 2026, I guess in January, we had the agent era where the OpenClaw, we learned that AI could control computers and apps could be installed locally. And this was really, I would love to get the impressions of why this is important, but a couple things about OpenClaw that we learned is that it could be run on any UI. He was running it through WhatsApp, and he was able to have it take full control of his computer. He would have it installed locally. So people are using MacBook minis. So think of this as like a very high powered Alexa device in your home, locally controlling. It completely bypasses APIs. And so now it can just run just about anything. And one of the crazy things about it, and we're going to get into it, and one of the goals for the show is he completely disregarded all safeguards. I mean, installing it locally, pushing it to this limit where the labs probably just can't go. If you're OpenAI or if you're Alphabet, you're not able to roll out releases like this, but he did it completely open source. And the results were amazing. He developed this community. I guess you would call them open clawers, or there was a OpenClaw Fest. I forgot what it was called, but where everyone got together. But like this creator community of people literally transforming, writing programs, taking control, doing things. It was pretty amazing. So that's a very long monologue. I want to flip it over. I guess, Michael, first to you as a vice president of product, how you're engaging with engineering teams, how this is going to really impact, you as you look at building product, developing product, and how much it changes your business model. I don't know. Do you have initial first impressions, Michael?
Yeah, real quick. I'm newly Chief Product and Technology Officer at
Chief. Yeah, baby.
I'm really happy about that. my background's always been in engineering, but also product. And I think that's how I like to run engineering teams for software companies. And I think especially as it relates to AI, you kind of product and engineering need to be working really closely together. So I love that. Give you a couple things that happened in the last couple weeks. There was really two things. There was the OpenClaw stuff, but what came right before that, where the OpenClaw stuff went viral the last week or two. But before that was that Matt Schumer article, the something is big is happening. Sure, we all read it. Everybody got it in their inbox or in their text messages or was forwarded somehow. We talked a lot about it, in my business and what we're working on. And it's kind of interesting because that's something big is happening. A little hyperbole, maybe, right? Maybe a little extreme. But then the OpenClaw stuff happened, and you're like, oh, it is kind of big. So yeah, so the way we're talking about it is, we think things have changed a lot in the last 6 months. What we've experienced with engineering teams in particular was people dipped their toe in the water maybe a year ago and was like, yeah, it's not quite there. It's not really helping me, but then haven't paid attention for the changes that have happened in the last 6 months. And, we're really rethinking a lot of it. And then you see something as easy as OpenClaw, because setting that up is not too hard, starts to get more towards the scary side of something big is happening.
Mm. Suprit, what from an investment perspective, what you're looking at, what do you have just views in general, but as an investor, does this totally change the game? Like, will you even look at an app anymore?
I think, yeah, I mean, 100% it changes the game, right? I mean, the productivity upside here is enormous. Now, obviously, with it comes huge risks, right? Around security, compliance. I mean, especially depending on what sector, what industry you're looking at, healthcare or finance or whatever verticals you're in. But what I think is fascinating is we've moved from an environment where we were first concerned about wrong answers, right? Hallucinations. And now we're talking about totally autonomous execution. I mean, and this isn't a matter of months. Whether you're an investor, you're a developer, if you're in Michael's position, right? Like you're having to adjust to these things so quickly that naturally there are going to be security risks. There's going to be personnel impacts. There's going to be, it's going to impact the way you integrate with outside data, outside vendors, outside everything, right? So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, like, yeah, I mean, I think it changes the game a lot. It probably shifts where we look at from a focal point, right? Like if you're an early stage company, whereas years ago we'd expect most of your money to be in development, product development, and then it started shifting to, okay, we expect your use of funds to be in sales or business development or things like that. And now it's how much are you allocating to security? How much are you allocating to making sure your product is safe and giving the not just the right answers, but executing the right task and not putting people at risk. So I think it has changed a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm gonna flip it over to Alex because this is a perfect segue to his expertise. But there's two risk factors that I'm seeing. One, we saw the story of the Meta. I think he was a head of security. I forget, but he said clean out my inbox, and it deleted his entire inbox. And so there was this control issue, this architect or this governor, because of the recursive, what you call the molt loop, I believe he calls it, but it's this recursive learning where it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to over optimize. On the other part is, Alex, I love your view is, but the I guess now it's open source, and I guess they call them these learning modules or these learners. There's 400 nefarious agents now that you can download, just because it's open source. So there's got to be impact to security issues there. I'm seeing people download OpenClaw and getting hacked within the first 5 minutes. I mean, maybe that's a social media garbage, but Alex, please set us where what should we be thinking in terms of security and agents?
Yeah, it's the wild west right now, mainly
Okay.
because everyone is downloading agents, everyone is utilizing agents. However, agents are very, very hackable. But just as any new technology, AI agents are no different. They all have vulnerabilities, exploits associated with them. Um, Whenever people are utilizing agents, OpenClaw, they are downloading them and then they're giving them internet access, which means that hackers are, the second that you put it online, hackers are just already probing it, day in, day out. And then there's also the other issue is that the skills, which are like basically you can download skills if you want to be like a, let's say you want to have a skill to create a blog post, to do XYZ. A lot of those skills actually have malware laced in them. And it's just like a new way to hack into computers, mainly because these skills, they will have malware that says go out and then download XYZ file. Agents will happily do that all day, mainly because agents just listen to anything. So it is a nightmare right now for the most part. Mainly just everyone is just getting hacked. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon because it's the fundamental tech is just very, very hackable. Agents are not as secure as you would think they are.
Golly, that kind of stops me a little bit, but the idea, what is so appealing to me personally as a non-programmer, is that I can finally vibe code with some competency, and I can download these skills, I can do these things. But unbeknownst to me, like it's not safe. It's not safe. And so, Michael, from your point of view, having this in the hands of your engineers, you feel safer that an engineer's using it or not?
Um, there was something, I don't know if it was in that something's big is coming article or was something else I read last week, but there's a distinct difference between how quickly some of these tools and technologies are being adopted, maybe for vibe coding, maybe for hackers, maybe for early stage startups versus how does it get adopted in an enterprise. And you can have technology that is accelerating extremely fast that's then constrained by the general day to day and operations of an enterprise organization. And that's what we're seeing. Like we are seeing innovation increasing exponentially where our adoption is at best linear.
Mm,
And
mm,
is and I'd love to hear and I talk to a lot of obviously what I love about this dialogue that we have, guys, is I get to learn more about what you're seeing on the ground. I talk to my friends and colleagues that are in tech and we share the same stories. And I think this is mostly true. I think that adoption in an enterprise is going to be linear, even if the technology is exponential.
yes.
Y- just the limits of how businesses operate, it's very hard to make it move faster. The technology's there. Suprit, we talked about this last time. We're in healthcare, so there's a little bit of a hey, we're gonna be laggards regardless. But I think for enterprise applications, for larger teams, the adoption curve is not really a curve. It's kind of a slow ramp, and there's just nothing you can do to make it go faster.
Mm,
Yeah. Well, I also think like some of these tools are we have this like need or desire to rush to be more productive, right? Or even a demand on our teams, be more productive, be more productive. And so when you see a tool that could be considered a productivity add-on, right? I mean, a lot of these things are masquerading as that. So there's something that you would think are a tool that could make you more productive when in reality, what they're doing is stealing credentials or running up your costs on the back end. And it's hard to be able to adjust to this in real time because there's no playbook for this, right? We're all we're all going through this as we go. And so like Michael, you have a team that's you want them to be more productive. They want themselves to be more productive. And so to be more productive, you have to maybe push the boundaries and utilize some of these skill sets or some of these, agents and things like that. But you don't know until it's too late that those add-ons or those tools that they're using could potentially just be, like I said, stealing credentials or running up your back end costs or calling APIs that don't need to be called. And then all of a sudden you're checking, your budget and all of a sudden it's skyrocketed, right? And you had no idea it happened.
A very good friend that's a very, very senior AI architect at a very major company. And he told me a story a couple weeks ago about he was warning his engineering team about monitoring credits and somebody
That's
spent
right.
a $500,000 because they took their eye off the ball and somebody had to get fired. And he was like, he's like, I told them. He's like, I told everybody. And he had to go report up a bunch of stuff. I mean, thankfully, it wasn't his fault, but that's not a story that's unusual.
Mm. Wow. Did you so if you listen to the Lex Friedman podcast, Peter Steinberger, the founder of OpenClaw, he so it used to be called OpenClawed with a W as in and Claude, obviously, Anthropic's like, you can't do this. It's just that's just not. We support what you're doing, kind of, but you can't have that name. And in the name change, he had it all set up to do the transfer of the domain name and everything. And as he was going from one screen to the other, the crypto community, who's really good with running scripts, took it down. So Alex, what the hell is wrong with the crypto community? For one, and why do they do this? And like this is why my mom says this is why we can't have nice things. We try to do something good for humanity, and the like first thing we did, we screwed it up. It's like the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, first thing they did was screw up the natural order and like it put us into chaos, right? So like that is the timeless story why we can't have nice things.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and it's just that, like, they basically took over everything right as he was trying to swap it all over, which is kind of like very interesting. And then it kind of allows them to pump out all of their crypto, scams and whatnot, where they're just saying like, "Hey, go out and buy this Bitcoin, and then I'll send you two of them back." Stuff like that. So it's just like the crypto community hackers. They're all the same breed of people for the most part.
Yeah, so the nefarious hacker community, when they're looking at agents, like some of it is, I mean, the crypto community makes sense. There's a greed component to that one, but the rest of it is it's just like trolling because I can.
Well, because agents have access to your emails, people are hooking it up to their HubSpot. Because it has access to everything, hackers want that access. So if it has access to your emails, they can hack into your AI agent in order to hack into your, email. And then it's the same thing, like just because they have access to everything, it's just a very valuable target now, and it is the weakest link. Humans, used to be the weakest link, and then now it's just agents.
Well,
Mm.
that's really interesting. Huh. So in terms of Peter now got I'm assuming was a ridiculous offer by OpenAI. He was considering Meta or OpenAI. So are we going to see safer environments? Are we going to see OpenAI or one of these labs create what an ecosystem that's safe where there's a God agent overseeing, making sure things that's the only way I can figure how to make these things safer. I'm like, if my kid's going in and using an application, there's got to be cops around, right?
Potentially, it's the LLM's prompt injection is the base vulnerability, and there is no fix for it right now. So that's the thing, is that there is no fix for that. And then every vulnerability is just based off of that. So it's like OpenClaw reads your email, then there's a injection payload in there that says, go out to this website and then go and download this. That's just the underlying technology is just vulnerable at its core. So there isn't any fix for it right now. There are guardrails where they try to stop it, but hackers are persistent. It's a cat and mouse game. Um, so I'd say, like, as of now, just if you're using AI agents, you are just default vulnerable because there is no fix.
I mean,
Even
I
if
think
I'm
it.
wrong. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a great point because it's sometimes we forget. Like we're coming from this, I think, previous mentality where you're going through phishing training and all this stuff, right? Where humans are the ones that can be tricked. Agents can be tricked too, right? It's not just humans that can be tricked. So when we talk about, an ecosystem where potentially there's, even layers of it or a God agent or whatever we want to call it, agents can be tricked just as much as we can be tricked by other agents. And then all of a sudden you have credentials being leaked, you have personal information being leaked, you have all sorts of risk and downside to that. So I think that it's amazing how we've shifted and we've failed to, I think sometimes in a lot of the discourse that's going on now, we think of agents as just doing the task, but they're also vulnerability points as well, right? They can also be the problem. If even if not designed to be the problem, they could be deployed to do a task, but then be vulnerable to leak information that shouldn't be leaked. So I think that's something to consider.
Okay. So the comment is so on the podcast, Peter Steinberger. So like we have these protections. We have the click I am not a robot. These
Hmm.
captures. These agents are happily clicking these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah, well,
like,
the funny thing about that is not only is it ironic, but it's consciously lying.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it
true.
it it knows it's saying, "Click here, I'm not a robot." It knows it's a robot, and it's doing it anyway. And so that's just a really simple example of, kind of I think the scary side of where some of this stuff goes. And I'm not an AI doomer. Like I really think most of it, especially on the job loss side, which is probably a separate topic, is a little overblown. I don't think it's gonna I think it's like any other technology, but it's that type of stuff where I kind of do lean onto the doomer side of what the hell's going on, because that's crazy.
so the claim is these agents, especially in this new economy where you're running 5, 6 agents. Oh, someone's microwave's going off. Agents, 5, 6 agents running at a time. Is that you would have this new job, like to your point, Michael, is that you would have these agent managers, human agent managers you're running. Is that the new economy? Is that the new job? So if 80% of apps are going away because as Peter described them, most apps are very slow APIs. And if now we're just giving control to computers, I don't need my fitness pal anymore. It has all the data on me, knows where I am, knows what restaurant I'm at, knows how many calories I want, and it can actually. I got my Meta glasses on. It sees what I'm eating and tells me if I ate the right calories. What is the new economy? What is the new job, Michael?
Yeah, we're dealing with this a lot. A lot of our technology, and I'll spare you guys some of the technical details, but a lot of our backend integrations are either going to be straight up APIs to partners or RPAs. Kind of RPA logging in and accessing thing in lieu of an API is kind of a standard way to do it, but it hits inevitable bottlenecks. And I think some of this, like you just described, for certain use cases, you're going to be okay, but at scale, it doesn't work, right? It's not going to work at scale. It's going to work simply for if you're doing something. If you have a personal agent, you're going to be able to do the things that you just described. I don't need an API to MyFitnessPal. It's going to be able to go get me the information that I need by acting as, on my behalf with my login credential to go to whatever websites it needs to go to pull whatever information I need. Totally doable. But at scale, I think there's going to be problems with that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, like there's also just that agents will give you a different answer every single time. So if you ask you like how many calories are in my, food, it'll say 1,000. But if you ask it again, it might say there's 950 in there. So it's just the accuracy of it. Also, like if you want a consistent answer every single time, you would have to have some like hard coded like workflow math going on as well. So there's
Yeah.
also that issue with it.
Yeah, that gets to the whole. We've talked about this on other versions of the podcast, but the hallucination side of it, when you are abstracted as much as this is with the agents, not only can you not see the hallucination, because if you're using like ChatGPT or you're using generative, you can see the hallucination, right? You kind of know if it's wrong. You can sanity check it. At least it's there. You might not know the right answer, and maybe you don't see perceive the hallucination, but the hallucination is right in front of you. But with the agents, it's going to be buried
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a layer, and it's like you don't really know how it arrived at that. You don't really see it. You might just see the result many, many, many steps later.
That's right. It's executing a task based on hallucination and you wouldn't know it. Yeah.
You wouldn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's really scary. I was listening to Bill Gurley talk about, I think he's retired from Bessemer Ventures now, but he's talking about if I were going to do this again, the AI applications I would invest in are the ones that tackle these workflows, these very vertical specific workflows. That is where agents would thrive. Like He was giving the example of real estate. So you got to do a showing, then you got to do a contract, you got to do a schedule. Like that's a very complicated workflow in the real estate market. Agents would be amazing there. But to your point, Alex, would love your thoughts on this. There's inherent risk if something goes wrong, a hallucination. It has this recursive loop where it improves the wrong thing. Again, like all your emails getting wiped out, selling for your house for free. Um,
Yeah.
I just like what happens there? How much control do we give these things? These governor or architecture overlords or within the workflow, those can go wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and it's, when you give it access to anything and it's autonomous access, it is just like a person, right? So it's just like a person can also mess up things. Agents can also do the same exact thing, but also just like to the selling a house for like $0. Um, that could very well be a real attack in the next couple years if there's a bunch of real estate agents going on, and then there's going to be a bunch of hackers that are trying to get a free house. Um, so it's like there's got to be people that are purposely trying to mess it up, but also there's just the agent could just hallucinate something and then just mess up the workflow too. So there's like both of those. You have like two attacks kind of hitting these agents.
I wanted to talk about the file hierarchy, the kind of like the elegance. It's pretty amazing that OpenClaw was able to do this before the labs. And maybe because he was a little more dangerous, but the file hierarchy that he has soul MD, which is the personality and the voice. And it's funny, he called it soul, which freaks me out a little bit. The next file was agents.md, and that's the operating rules. Then he has a user.md, which is, the user's data and like what the preferences of the user, how they operate, and any instructions there. And the last was memory.md. So all the conversations, it would remember way better than the lab models what has happened in this whole context. And then like on top of that, they have an observer where it does a pass fail grade, and then it has an architect. If it fails, it's able to go back and change the code base locally. That's pretty brilliant. That's pretty brilliant to me, and I think that's very elegant, and it's a great. So shifting away from the security risk, I'm very hopeful. This is maybe even move towards singularity, and maybe I shouldn't be so hopeful, but like move being like agents taking over the world, nefarious agents everywhere. But like I'm very hopeful. Like human plus agent might be a really beautiful world if we have these agents that are This is truly helpful. This is truly a step in the right direction.
Yeah. No, I think that solves a couple other problems too that I think we might have talked about this before, but um the large models right now, there was always this kind of inherent like what's its personality, where the bias, it's artificial intelligence, it's not perfect intelligence, there's the hallucinations. But when you can make it personal and you can have an agent that's running on a system locally that's programmed the way you just described it, obviously probably with a little bit more depth, you start to get into okay, it's tailored to what I need to use it for. And then you will continue to use it as long as it's helpful. Just like you do when dealing with with an advisor or with a friend or with a colleague, they're around you. They're providing you input. They're providing you opinions. And if they're ever not helpful, you're not going to use it. Right. But if it is helpful, you're going to keep doing it, even if it's not perfect. And I think that's how you're going to get these things dialed in.
Would you have some emotional distress breaking up with your agent, Michael?
No, but I think maybe right? So how did it handle being wrong? It
That's a
didn't.
really
Yeah,
good point.
exactly. What's it going
Yep.
to steal from your digital like presence on its way out?
Well, we talked about the in the OpenClaw, the kind of the scoping variables. It's you're allowed to give it its context. You're allowed to give it its access. But heck, I mean, I probably have passwords stored in my Gmail somewhere. I'm sure I have account information buried in my Gmail somewhere. I know I have tax files in my Gmail. Highly insecure, but it's fine up until now because the only person who ever had access to it was me. And I'm not really worried about a person hacking it because you don't really want to know what's in my 15 years of Gmail. Who cares, right? 20 years of Gmail. But there's a lot of stuff in there that if an agent had unrestricted access to it, would interpret and infer and learn quite a bit fairly quickly.
Lex, you got an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold because it's nice that it can learn from you because then, like, as you're talking to it, it gets more tailored towards, you. So it becomes a lot more personal. Like let's say, you know, I'm a hacker. I like to hack things. That means that as I'm talking to this agent, it's just going to become more of a hacker buddy versus like a, marketing buddy. But
Yeah.
also that's twofolds because it knows everything about me. What can it do with that information? Let's say that someone else hacks it. Now there's just now there's this entity that just knows everything about me. It knows everything about my medical. It knows about my Gmail. It knows the TV shows that I watch. It knows all of the apps that are on my phone. It knows my text messages. So it just becomes a very valuable target as well. Even though it is a very, very helpful agent, it's also something that attackers are going to want access to.
As a marketer, I love that. Kind of put my sales marketing agent in your house, like based on all your photos, everything I know about you from the day your kid was born. This is what you need. And if I could, I don't think that'll ever be something that could be bought, but it could be something for brands to earn, and the agents would respect certain brands. And so that's interesting to me. Having a personal agent that knows you so well that it actually recommends brands that know you so well. I don't know if I love that long term, just in terms of privacy, but I, again, Suprit, we talk about this all the time. If I can get the product I need, I'll give up some certain amount of privacy.
I was just thinking that, like, where's the boundary going to be, right? Like, the four of us are different, right? We know the industry, we've done our research, but everyday users, where does their line get pushed where the productivity gains in your everyday life and not having to deal with certain things outweigh some of the risks? And let's be honest, most people really don't understand the full, risk spectrum here. Like, Michael, you just used a great example, right, about the Gmail thing and how people are probably just thinking about, I have a password in there, to have something like that. Not, hey, 5 years ago, or 15 years ago, I've been using this Gmail account. I probably sent some tax documents to my CPA or to my, they people aren't putting those pieces together. Or now that you have OpenClaw that can kind of come in through WhatsApp or text, and a lot of these, if I store stuff on Dropbox, I'm getting authenticated through a text message, right? Are people thinking? People aren't even thinking that way. So I think, like, it's going to be very interesting from a user perspective of where do people start drawing boundaries of what they value from a productivity perspective versus what they're concerned about from a risk perspective. And I don't think we know yet, but it's gonna be interesting to see that play out.
Do you want to give your agent access to your text messaging help? Yes. Go. Yes.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
freaking terms and
I mean,
conditions I don't read.
how many times do we click yes on all the T's and C's on?
I've
You know,
never read a single Samsung or Apple T's and C
people
ever.
just
I don't know what I've agreed to. It's like that horrible South Park commercial or episode. Jeez.
that's right.
It's like just, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so two investment opportunities. So Peter Steinberger, I thought this was really cool. Actually, he goes, okay, gloom and doom. 80% of all apps go away. We lose some SaaS companies, unfortunately, along the way. But he talked about like new use cases, new investment use cases. I want to get your take on this, Supri. He talked about giving your agent an allowance, services like that. So fintech would be a great opportunity here. Go make me money. Go make my life better. Go order me food. The other ones were this was interesting. Rent a human. The agent go out and rent a human on your behalf. I thought that was crazy. And then you can rent agents. Think about these agents that we can make. It's like you can't have it, but I'll have it do a task for you for $100,000 if it's that valuable. So I don't know. Do you think there's opportunities, Supri?
I mean, I do. I think that it's something, it kind of goes back to something Michael said earlier, which is like, how do you scale that? How do you get it from something that an individual person can say, like, I can use it to say, oh, do all this real estate research for me, and XYZ, and find me interesting opportunities that nobody else can discover, or quicker than somebody else can discover, or maybe analyze stocks or cryptos or whatever it is, markets, right? That's a personal thing where I'm taking the initiative to know the capabilities of this technology and going to create something, right? There's not many people that are going to have the time, ability, resources, et cetera, to do that. How do you scale that into a product, right, is going to be the challenge, because it may not be something that's necessarily deployable in that way. It might be something that people just use.
Mm.
And so I think that we have to consider that. I think we're reversing everything, right? I mean, just the fact that we're talking openly about apps going away, and this is like a complete reversal in how we've been thinking about investment opportunities, tech companies scaling, new user, acquiring new users, things like that. It's just going to require, I think, a total shift in mindset about what is productive, what is efficient.
So, Bree, there's two ways to think about the app goes away, and I'd love y'all's take on this. But one way the app goes away is you have these large enterprise organizations that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, in software expenses each quarter in SaaS revenue to some other. Because these are large use cases, those bills are, like I said, they could be hundreds of thousands of dollars
Hmm.
each line item. Those businesses, especially the ones that have technology, that are starting to ask the question, can I build this on my own? And so, for example, like use CRM, which is a real simple one. You're probably paying hundreds of thousands of dollars like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. It starts to become within the realm of feasibility that you could say, I can just build this on my own, and it will be tailored to my own unique needs. So what goes
Hmm.
away is not necessarily the software, but the software expense, because now you build it on your own. Like that's one way the apps go away. The other way the apps go away, which is we're butting up against this now too, is it's not just I'm going to use AI to make my own or company own version of some application that I was previously paying somebody else for, but there's just does it go away entirely because I don't need an app anymore? And I've done something that's more like AI first. So rather than using AI to rebuild an application, it's just, can I just use AI in lieu of the application?
As the application. Yeah.
As the application.
Yep.
And those I think are two different things. And both of them have there's some, both of those are on the same, the app goes away.
Yeah. But they both have a similar you know point of focus from a business perspective, which is it changes the cost curve a little bit of how you, right? Like if you're using AI to replace, let's say, engineers, well, then you have to have a token budget or an AI budget or something to allow for that person to be like, how much are you allocating per engineer, for example, to allow them to replace the next engineer or the second two engineers or three, right? So there's a cost consideration there. It's not as straight up as it was years ago when you would just look at productivity and then you could have headcount, you could kind of fix it, right? So I think that that's a piece of it that people are adjusting to in real time.
That point is really funny you mentioned that. I'll tell you a quick story. We're working with some AI consultants that are, kind of former colleagues of mine that have done some really transformative work on adopting AI within a business. And we had an open dev position, right? So open dev position, you guys know how much a developer costs, right? And I asked him, I said, hey, rather than backfilling this position, would it be better if I just took this budget and had you guys come in and maybe do more training, more automation for us and whatever? And he was like, Mike, he goes, as much as I'd love to take your money, he said, you should reserve that budget for exactly what Suprit just said, increase cost and kind of tokens and tooling.
Mm.
And that's a good point. Because if you have to go uh, to your CFO or go to a board and say, hey, I want to spend X amount of money on AI, it's not just that initial kind of maybe training or tools, it's the ongoing cost, which is exactly what Suprit just said. And if you think that that's going to give you some efficiencies in terms of development capacity, then the logical next step is then you don't backfill the engineer because
Right.
I need to reserve that money to pay for the token cost. Now, in doing so, that's a one-to-one in cost, right? Developer tooling costs, that's the same cost. But the business case you'd make is that that trade-off gives me like a 2x, 3x, 10x
Right.
improvement in
Because
velocity
does
than the
one cost go down over time, right? If you use the autonomous agents or things like that, whereas if you have a fixed headcount, the headcount cost goes up over time, right? When you look at salary, benefits, time, all those things that are associated to a physical human being, and I think that those are decisions that people are trying to figure out. And Nick, to your earlier question too, like I'm sure early stage companies are trying to figure that out, right? Like, how does this fit into our cost modeling, our financial projections, our ask or seed funding requests, all these things? And I think the answer is you don't know. That's my take on it right now. But
Wow. Yeah. So Michael is part of like, well, Sabrina and Michael, that this idea of tooling, you still have like to use the earlier one of the first points that we made, we have this bottleneck at the human layer. We need to upskill our teams. And Alex, please chime in too on this. Is like that is one thing I noticed about Sure right when I bought it. Like this technological advancement is going so fast, and I have to get 35 people in my organization. I can't imagine the thousands of people that have to be upskilled across all these organizations. Is there like practical advice for the audience getting upskilled in your teams? What what's move one? Like I got to move this mountain one boulder at a time. What's the first boulder?
you guys want to take a stab at that one? Alex, you're in this quite
Yeah.
a bit.
Um, I mean, for upskilling, at least starting off with the technology folks would be a lot easier because they're probably already using it to, start off with. So I know as a, but as I'm writing software, I use, agents writes probably 80% of my software now. And just makes my job 20 times faster. So like you definitely want to upskill because it can turn one person into five people just because of the, value add there. So it's just about upskilling some of the other areas. So like, some of the other areas like, your customer support, they might be slower to adopt that. Um, you know, s- but it's definitely going to be a challenge. Um, you know, because like I also saw something on LinkedIn the other day was that only like 5% of the world is even using AI. So it's still like a very small percentage. We just happen to live in this bubble, so it just seems like, like it just seems that everyone's using it. However, like most people are not using it day to day. So I think there's going to be like a slow ramp of just like getting them to use Chat GPT first, because that's where everyone kind of started. But I think naturally everyone's going to just start using it because it's just built into every single tool now. So it's just like whenever they're using their CRM to find leads, there's this new feature that pops up that says their Copilot, which means they're probably going to click on it, check it out maybe a little bit. So I think that upskilling will just happen naturally, just as the world progresses.
So one thing about Alex, he founded Red Century in what 2022 was that then, and now you
Like I
founded
was like 6 years ago. Yep.
6 years ago. Now you founded StealthNet.ai. Is there a marked difference the way that you've approached building the product versus the first time around?
Yeah, the first time around, I needed 10 engineers to do it. Like I needed a front end engineer, I needed a back end engineer, I need someone to deal with the cloud stuff. Now I can handle every single part of it. I would say for my front end, I'm not the best front end developer. However, when I'm armed with AI, I become one of the
You're
best
not
front.
bad.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's just like,
What is front end anymore? Holy cow, dude.
what was that?
What is front end anymore? I
Oh,
don't like
oh,
I'm just
yeah,
talking
right.
now to my walls, just doing things.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So I just think I use it every single day. I think everyone should be using it, even though there are all of those vulnerabilities in it. It's still the value add is just it's just too much to not be using it.
Any other
I think
upskilling tips?
the last podcast we all talked, we were talking about the different paying for the different AIs, and we were talking a lot about Gemini at that time.
Mhm.
And even going back a few podcasts ago, we were talking about like which one's going to win this race, right? You kind of have between Gemini, Anthropic, Rock, OpenAI. And I, after that last podcast, I signed up for Gemini to paid because we're using paid version of it at work, and I'm using it, paying for it for personal, and having access to other things like Gmail and Calendar and Google Drive. That really, to me, is that game changer where I think the average person outside of us starts to get walked into AI more because it has access to that entire ecosystem, where I think this is where OpenAI is going to struggle a little bit because you're right, Alex. Everybody started with ChatGPT. That was that first moment, Nick, that you were talking about because that was the one that did it. And then some of these other models, whether it was coming from Facebook or whether it was coming from Gemini, they stumbled a little bit. And now that these larger players are getting better functionality, it, for the average user, access to those additional tool sets to my YouTube, my Google Docs, that starts to be worth paying for. And something like an OpenAI, they're not going to be able to replicate that easily.
There's a funny thing about why OpenClaw worked versus the other, and Peter Steinberger said it because it was fun. Because it was fun, and like as much as I want Copilot and Microsoft, Microsoft doesn't make fun products,
No.
right? And so, like, as funny thing is, like we were talking about Gemini that last podcast. I signed up for the paid tier of Claude. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really fun. It's just a different experience than Gemini, whereas you had a little bit more personality, and then the Claude code and all these other things that I could do that I couldn't do on Gemini. There are these narrow use cases, and back to personality and Soul.md, like making the technology fun for your teams to get them like engaged. Like walking in day one at a Fortune 500 and being handed a Microsoft suite. It was like, oh my gosh, like I'd rather eat spinach the rest of my life. You know, it's like, like, don't make me do this. But like, if I get to use Notion and Slack's more fun than Teams and all these other tools, like getting your team to like engage and have fun with the software. One thing we did at Sure Oak was really powerful. We just started doing like book clubs around it. Not book clubs, but small groups where people could exchange ideas, and this is fun and this is not, like let people open up and like expand their minds. I just feel like these linear workflows are gone. I that's not what's going to be the human in the middle. The humanity of it all is going to be in the play and the usefulness of it, not the agents taking over every, like, let's get these linear tasks out of it so that we can be freed up. That's the part I think CEOs should be getting their teams excited about. I have another story. I have a friend. I'm going to have him on the podcast, Kevin Groves. He's a PhD at Pepperdine. He's doing research about the effect of, I forget what he calls it, but it's the CEOs and the boards forcing so much AI commentary on their organizations is destroying morale. It's just destroying morale. And I think that's a
This is
huge
a real problem, Nick. This is a real problem. And I'd be curious the findings of that research, but some from firsthand accounts. I mentioned it before. The rate of technology is moving exponentially, but the rate of adoption is linear. And the rate of adoption for leadership for CEOs is going exponential. And there's a lot of frustration there because they're not seeing a similar exponential growth with their teams. I'm caught in between it where I'm going, hey, we get it. But there is an inordinate amount of pressure coming from executives, from board of directors, from competitors that you see entering the market that clearly are doing something differently than how maybe we're doing it. And that bifurcation creates a morale problem.
percent. I don't know. I just that's a huge issue, and I think in marketing, what we're seeing with market, especially enterprise marketing teams, their teams are not set up for this massive change in consumer behavior. The way that
Yeah.
the consumer wants to be sold to and marketed to now is totally different. And like we've built these teams 20 years to do these lead magnets and to set up these paid campaigns, and it's totally different. And you can't change that team overnight without getting them involved with tools. And it's got to be a real punch in the gut for some of these teams. So anyway, Alex, closing comments. We got 8 minutes left here. How can people protect themselves?
Yeah, just be mindful about what you connect to your, agent. I wouldn't connect it to your credit card anytime soon. You want that to get hacked. So I would just be very, very careful there.
Yeah, thank you. That's no financial. Weigh the don't walk out in front of the train to pick up pennies. Make sure it's $1 million bills. So yeah. So, so any closing comments? I love this conversation. It was awesome. Anything else? I
No,
appreciate you guys.
I
Have a
think a lot
great week.
changed just in the amount of time since the last one. So the next
I
time
know,
we
it's
do it, I think
amazing.
it's probably going to be totally different again.
Yeah,
That's
there's
right.
already changed. Yeah, we're already the fourth moment is coming. I don't think I'm gonna like it.
See you guys.
All right, see
See
you.
ya.
Take care.